My name is Dave Hollenbach, the host of From Embers to Excellence. My goal is to explore the many facets of leadership from the perspectives of some amazing people. In addition to leadership, I like to discuss mental health, PTSD, and overcoming adversity. If you have a favorite episode, I would love to hear about it. Message me through social media or my website, and I will share some free tools to help you achieve your goals. Please like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you haven't purchased your copy of my book, Fireproof, please grab a copy today. Thanks for listening. Today I'm speaking with Tim Heale. He's a former British Army infantry soldier, PSYOPS operator, has done 7 operational deployments in that capacity, and he's the host of the Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories podcast. He's got quite an incredible history, great story, awesome podcast. I know that you guys will enjoy what we're about to dig into. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on the show and having this conversation with me.
No, absolutely. My pleasure, Dave. Looking forward to it.
Where were you born and raised? So we'll start off there.
I was born in a absolute tiny little place. It was 2 cottages and a farm at the back of the de Havilland factory. Now, if you know of de Havilland, during the Second World War, they built the Mosquito aircraft there, and then after the war, they built the Comet. And we lived just at the back of there. I was born on this farm and was there for about a year before we moved into a place called Welling Green, which is just outside Hatfield, which is about 20 miles north of London. And Hatfield at the time was becoming a kind of new town after the Second World War, because they were rebuilding. London got flattened, and the East Enders and North London types moved out into the suburbs and into these new towns, and Hatfield was one of those. And we kind of moved out, and the area that I grew up in was pretty rough. With us kids, they taught us how to fight first. They had to put the dukes up and be able to fight before you could walk. And then when you went out, you still ended up getting a clump for somebody. So it was a pretty rough area that we grew up in. And East London, North London is used to be really tough people, and it gave us a good grounding, really. I had a great time growing up as a kid.
You have many siblings?
Kind of, yeah. I've got 2 actual sisters. I've got a half sister. I've got a half brother. I think that's about it. Yeah, my parents split up when I was about 8 or 9, and they both ended up remarrying and having our kids. So, but I was never really at home as a kid. Was always off out with my mates. Sun comes up, we go out. So sun goes down, and we're probably still out. So, yeah, my mother never knew where I was, ever. I got into so much trouble you wouldn't believe. But it was fun growing up. School for me wasn't brilliant. It's some years, just a few years ago, finally found out I'm dyslexic, and that had a bit of an effect on my schooling originally. But the major thing that had an effect on my schooling was the injustice that befell me. I was being picked on by a bully, and this is I must have been only about 6 or 7, and there was this bully in the class, and he started to pick on me. And I went home and I had a word with the old man, because they were still married at the time, and I said, "Here, Dad, I've got this bully, he's picking on me. What should I do about it?" He said, "Well, son, what you need to do is, when he starts, give him a right good thump." And he says, "Make it a good one, because if you don't, you're going to get a good hiding." And he said, "You're probably going to get a good hiding anyway. but he'll get your respect and he'll leave you alone. Anyway, goes in school the next day. All anybody saw was me thump him. Him go flying back into the school pond. I get dragged off to the headmaster's office and I get 6 of the best. I mean, you couldn't make it up. And I felt really injustice. And I took an instant disliking to school after that. And I wasn't brilliant. I'm not a brilliant academic, but I'm fairly practical when it comes to sort of sticking a bayonet on and putting it in people and shooting and running around with big heavy packs on my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what led you to join the army?
Good question. Up until the age of 10, I was probably going to be a farmer because we used to, board on a farm, used to go down to my granddad's farm, which was just outside Brighton on the south coast, a place called Peacehaven. I did quite a bit of growing up down there. The granddad, he was a head pigman on the pig farm, and I wanted to follow my uncle's footsteps. He went off to agricultural college and all the rest of it. So up until the age of 10, I was going to be a farmer, and we looked at I was going to go into this agricultural boarding school. So I went to take the entrance test for that. Because of my lack of schooling, failed it miserably. And then I had to switch focus then. I thought, well, I can't be a farmer. Might as well go and join the army. And then when it came to time, 14 3/4 was the first time you can go and take the test to see whether you go in the army. So I did that and failed that pretty miserably as well. And the recruiting sergeant, he says to me, son, if you can't read and write proper like what I does, you've got no chance of coming in the army. You better go and have sort yourself out. Well, I mean, that was a bit of a blow. That weekend, I took a long, hard look at myself, give myself a right stern talking to. Monday morning, I went into school and I went to every class. I spent most of the time up in the bag. I never went to school, hardly ever. And I went every class that week. Half the teachers thought I was a new student. They'd never seen me before. So I kind of knuckled down for about 6 months and learned a few things, and then went back with a mate back to the recruiting office, and we sat down and he said, "Oh, you back then?" "Yeah, I've done some learning." I said. He said, "Right." He said, "There's the papers, boys. I've got to nip out and do something. Do the questions, and I'll come back and see how you get on." So anyway, my mate gives us a few of the answers, and I managed to get a place as a junior soldier at the age of 16, and I went off to the depot of the Queen's Division up in a place called Bassingbourne Barracks in Royston, Hertfordshire, and never really looked back.
Wow. Now, can you tell me a little bit about the path that led you into PSYOPS?
I'd done the time in the regular service, and I came out and I went into the reserves. And the first reserves I went into was 2-1 Special Air Service Regiment, the second Sea Squadron, a place called Hitchin in Hertfordshire, because that's where I was living. And about 6 months into it, we were on final tests up in the Welsh Mountains, and dark o'clock at night, about 19 hours into the final march. I'm carrying about 75, 60, 70 pounds, and my foot's gone down a rabbit hole. I stayed in one place, and my body's sort of gone round it with a pack and everything like that. And I woke up in hospital with a broken leg.
Wow.
So that ended that bit of a career. And then I went on to what they called regular reserve for a while. And then I managed to join another TA unit, a reserve unit. And 2 years into that, I got recruited onto what was known then as 15 UK Psychological Operations Group, because of some of the stuff I'd done in my past. My wife worked for a printer, just a local printer, and occasionally I'd go in and help them out run a single kind of Heidelberg press. So I understood the press, the print process and stuff like that. And that was one of the skill sets that they wanted on the group. And there you go. I got recruited onto there, and when I got recruited on, he says, if the need arises in the future, would you be prepared to deploy on an operational tour? Oh, yeah. Don't see why not. 6 months later, I'm on my way to Kosovo.
Wow.
Having spent 6 months on the group, learning the discipline. And I spent a year in Kosovo, and it was a really good training ground for me personally. I was able to pick up lots of new skills, not just on the print side of life, but also on the radio side of life. We had a commercial radio station out there that we set up, called Radio Galaxia, off the back of the one that we had in Bosnia, which was Radio Oxygen. So we had 2 radio stations that we were running locals, one thing, and so I learned a lot of the radio. And when I came back from there, I kind of went over to the radio side of it rather than the print side. I mean, quite a few guys in the print section at that time, but nobody really on the radio side. So I picked up the baton and started learning the radio side of it. And then we went to Macedonia the following year in 2001 when 9/11 happened. 5 months later, I'm flying into Kabul on my first tour of Afghanistan. And I must say, I really enjoyed Kabul. It was a really good posting, a really good operational tour. That time that the city was fairly benign for us. We were welcomed. There was not a lot of traffic about at the time when we first got there. You hardly saw any females on the street. By the time I left on the 20th of June, there was traffic jams everywhere. There was women wandering around without burqas on, and yeah, it was quite a good vibe about the city in sort of 2002. And we had a great tour. And then I ended up going to Iraq. Iraq wasn't a great tour for me. I didn't enjoy it much at all. I was tasked. The tasking I had was to come up with a campaign to enhance the perception of the Iraqi police service in the eyes of the locals. Now, pretty much on a hide into nowhere with that. The Iraqi police service had been corrupt and untrusted for decades under Saddam Hussein. And yeah, I mean, I had a bit of fun going around. I travelled around quite a bit of southern southern Iraq. I went up to places like Samwa, where the Dutch were working, and they had the Japanese come there for the first time. That was a good little campaign we run there, letting the locals know that the Japanese were coming in. First time they'd left they've gone on an operational tour outside of Japan since the Second World War. So that was quite a thing. And they were coming in to do a Pacific engineering task to build I think a school and bits and pieces like that we're going to do. So that they were put in a fairly safe area. And then I worked with the Italians in Nazaré. I mean, that was great fun. I spent quite a lot of time going up to Nazaré, to where the Italians were, and stopping overnight. And they were, their food was good, the wine was good. So that was fun. Went over to Alamara, nearly didn't come back from there. Got into a bit of a dust up with some nasty people. Went up to Baghdad. We went up for a conference, me and the boss, to a PSYOPS conference that was going to be held in the green zone. So we flew up from Basra to Baghdad on a Herc. The guys that was looking after us we had two sort of pickup type trucks. So they were going to take us from Camp Victory into the green zone in the centre of Baghdad. And just as we get into the gate to go out, this other convoy of two Humvees and another pickup truck pushed their way out in front of us. We followed them about, I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a minute behind them. Halfway into Baghdad, boom, they got blown up. That would have been us. I thought that was decisively unfriendly. There was, as far as I could see, within half a minute, the helicopter came in and started dealing with them, and I think there was about at least 3 dead, and quite a few casualties. We were just waved on to go straight into, and then the security sort of called sort of ramped up outside the green zone, and we've sat out there. I mean, bricking it slightly, thinking this is not nice, stuck outside. And then we finally got in. We had the meeting, managed to get back to Camp Victory without incident. That evening, we were sat on we were housed in this single floor building that you could go onto the roof, and they had one of these pot fire things. I don't know if you've seen them. And we sat around having a few near beers because Americans aren't allowed to drink beer when they're on. So a near beer is a sort of alcohol-free beer. So we sat up there sort of chewing the fat a bit, and all of a sudden a burst of about, I don't know, 20 or 30 5.0 rounds came whizzing over our heads within inches of us, and managed to kill a sentry on the gate. I thought that was a bit antisocial. And then the following day, we were due to fly back down to Basra, and the whole place was orange. Never seen anything like it. Everywhere was orange, and we managed to jump on the aircraft and just got off, and announcement came over the tannoy saying that that's lucky. They've just shut the airport. 5 minutes later, we would have been stranded there for a few days.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, Baghdad wasn't a nice place. And then I ended up doing another 2 tours of Afghanistan in Helmand province, and had some fun. I was out on one patrol and got brassed up 9 hours in contact. How we didn't lose anybody is a miracle. We took out quite a lot of Taliban. We got 500, dropped a £500 on them in the end to get us out of there. But yeah, it was almost down to one round a man sort of situation, and running out of water. And yeah, the only good part about that is that it lightened your load. And when I was actually carrying when we got onto the ground 42 kilos. That's over half my body weight. Yeah. it's a hell of a lug.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a tasty day.
What year was it when you joined?
I joined the army on the 5th of August 1974, and I retired from the army on the 4th of April 2018.
Holy shit.
44 years under the colours. Man, boy, regular and reserve.
Wow. That's incredible. That's an incredible career. And in there, so when I was reading about you, I read that you were a hang gliding instructor, you played a lot of rugby, you competed as a skier.
Telemark skier, not just a not a normal skier, telemark.
And what is telemark?
Telemark, it's free hill skiing. It's a cross between sort of cross country skiing and downhill skiing. So you've got downhill equipment. Plastic boots have changed the way that we ski. I used to ski on leather skis for donkey's years and pusser's planks. So, and I used to do a lot of touring. But when the plastic boots came out, I converted over to plastic boots and never went back. And yeah, downhill skiing, racing downhill is great fun. It's a great spectator sport. It's much better than, you see the alpine racing, and it's just boring like they're just screaming down. Well, telemark racing is screaming down, but it's going through the same sort of gates. But we add a few bits of interest into it, shall we say. There's a jump that we have to go over, and you have to clear a certain distance. And a jump can be anything from sort of a foot high to sort of 6 foot high, and you have to clear a distance. So, and that's on the way down. Then you get a what they call a wrap. It's a 360-degree sort of bowl that you have to ski round, and then you've got a skate section to finish off, and they normally make it uphill.
Wow.
I mean, you imagine coming down through sort of 40 gates, over a jump, round the wrap, and then you're on about 400-meter skate section, and half of it's going uphill. You are breathing heavily at the end of it. But it was, I did that for quite a lot of years. I mean, the last time I went, I just looking recently, 6 years ago, I last competed.
Wow.
And I went skiing this year, actually. The other week, I went into one of the indoor ski centres and had a couple of hours showing off, basically.
You went from being almost illiterate, an illiterate kid from a rough part of the UK, to going into the army and then becoming part of an elite group and being extremely successful in that role. And what would you attribute that to? Just grit and determination, or just unrealized intelligence?
The values and standards that the British Army instill in you, I think that had a big part to do with it. I think, I'm not thick by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, yes, I'm dyslexic, but I stick with it, and I don't like to be beaten. So it's just that dogged determination to make sure I don't look like a right wally, basically. So I've worked at reading and stuff over the years. I've read loads of books. It just takes a little bit more time. Right. I mean, the Harry Potter series, God, when that came out, I couldn't wait for the next one. And I've read them about 4 times, I think. I used to collect, I used to be a big collector of escape stories from the Second World War. And me and my best mate, we used to collect them, and we tried to find first editions and stuff like that. So, and we had a really big collection, and we used to swap them about between each other and read them and review them and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had a real passion for reading that sort of stuff. So it's one of those things that just kind of, you get better at it. But when I finally realised that the dyslexia, it made an awful lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, what is the difference between PSYOPs and like a propaganda operation?
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, it's quite simple. What we do is psychological operations, and the what that really is, it's planned operations against a known target audience to change an attitude and a behaviour. So that's psychological operations. What the enemy does is propaganda, lies and deception.
Gotcha.
Basically, yeah. The enemy does propaganda. We do psychological operations.
So it just depends on which side you're on then.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's kind of military marketing. It's just trying to, rather than sell a product, it's trying to change an attitude and the behaviour, and that's really what it's there to do. Lots of people think there's lots of cloak and dagger involved in it and skullduggery, but at the end of the day, it's just understanding the target audience that you're trying to influence to have that change in attitudes and the behaviour. And that's really what psychological operations is all about. And I was pretty good at it.
Can you discuss like any examples of what you would do?
Yeah. For instance, before you go on an operational tour, we start about 6 months prior to going on to an operation deployment. So we do have pre-deployment training. So we train for the operation that we're going on, and we start off with obviously some low-level personal skills and drills, just to bring your military skills up to date, your weapon handling skills, that sort of thing. At the same time, you're starting to read in to the operation that you're going on. You're getting what the commander's mission is. Then you're looking at the target audiences that you want to try and, or the commander wants to try and influence to change an attitude and behaviour. And that involves a huge amount of reading, basically reading into the target audience. So you're looking at all the open source information. So you're going onto the internet, you're finding news articles, you're finding stuff about the people you're doing, looking at a country study. So you're trying to build up a picture of what the target audience is and who they are. Particularly with the Afghans, is really, really complicated. They operate under a thing called Pashto Wali, and it's their way of life, their ethos. And you could have two warlords that have been trying to kill each other's villages for donkey's years. But you get an outsider tries to intervene, and they'll turn on him as one. And they've been killing each other for years, and now they've got to be friends to fight you. Yeah, so it's trying to get into their mindset and trying to understand what's likely to have an influence on them to be able to change that attitude or behaviour, and then we take part. We attach ourselves to a command headquarters that we're going to be working with. So we go on all their exercises, their pre-deployment training exercises, their command task exercises, the tabletop exercise. So we go around the battle groups. We get known in the battle groups. We do briefings on what we do, how we do it, what we need them to do for us. Like when the guys go out on the ground, we may give them a questionnaire to try and get filled in, trying to gain information all the time. All the time, we're getting in information from patrols on the ground about the target audience, and it's all to do with trying to get inside their mindset, find out what's likely to influence them, and to do the best products that we can that's going to achieve that. And that's really what it comes down to. It's knowing the target audience, and it's doing the research into understanding them.
What were some of the actions that you took to help influence these different tribal groups?
There was quite a lot of campaigning stuff going on. There was, because we were working in Helmand province, which is a fairly big province, and it ranges from sort of Kajaki up in the north where the dam is, and they're a different type up there. And then you come down through the green zone, the Sangin Valley, and they're slightly different factions in there as well. And then you come down to sort of Goresh and Lashkar, and then you come right down south to Garmasia, and across to Musakala. So there's lots of different types of people in that area. But one of the things that my main responsibility was for the radio side. We came up with putting in what we call radio in a box, and it's literally that. It's a radio station in a box. So you've got a 50-watt transmitter, FM transmitter, with a media case. So you've got a mixer desk on there, a couple of microphones, and a laptop to play some music out on, and you put the aerial up, set it all up, and you use a laptop and a couple of interpreters to be DJs. The guys that are running the interpreters as radio producers. So I'd go out, I'd teach the interpreters to be radio presenters and how best to do it. And I had a couple of really good ones down south in Garmasia that bounced off each other like a good little radio show, and they were playing some music and stuff like that. And we had a massive success down there. I've been down there for a few days, teaching the guys this, that, and the other, how to put the radio show together, sort of a radio wheel, where you put your ads in, how you put the news in, and how you play the music through. And so we were doing that, and we were ready to we were going to go live the following morning, but we thought we'd do a test in the afternoon just for half an hour or so. So I got them and we switched it on, booming out live. So we just tested around the sort of little radios around the compound just to make sure that it was actually going out. And they'd been on for about half an hour. They'd played a few tunes and had a bit of a chat. And a little while later, after we'd gone off the air, there was a couple of blokes approaching the camp, and the guards on the gate were getting a bit jumpy, and they were holding up bits of paper, and they come to the gate. Can you give this to the radio people? they wanted a request playing for them and their mates. So we went live the following morning, mentioned these couple of guys, and within they'd only been live for about 20 minutes. There was half a dozen people walking towards the camp holding up bits of paper.
Wow.
So over the next couple of days, we must have had about 300 or 400 bits of paper, all coming from blokes. And I thought, right, what's a couple of Afghan girls' names? So they came up with a couple of girls. Right, mention that these girls have asked their brother to bring in this message for them and their girlfriends. And a little while later, we had, I don't know, 24 letters from girls asking for music for their mates. And if that's not a measure of effect of a radio station going live, I don't know what is. So within the space of about 4 days, we had about a couple of thousand letters, requests coming in from locals that had listened to it.
Wow.
And we just because we had patrol places that had pushed down about 10 15 kilometers south of the district centre. We sent them down there with radio so they could pick it up down there. So we knew how far we were pushing out. And we worked really hard on this particular village to clear out the Taliban and push them south down towards Quetta's border. And that radio station was doing great guns. So that was a big success, and we had similar successes around the other bazaars as well, where we put these radios in and people coming for requests. So it was a good measure of effect that people were actually listening to what we were putting out, So we knew our messages were getting out, and we did lots of product testing of the messages. I mean, lots of it was just sort of news stories, that sort of thing. But if we wanted something that was going to have an impact on changing people's attitude, persuasions, then we'd work a little bit harder on it. We'd product test it with the local Afghans that we've got working for us, and bits and pieces like that, and then we come up with the right sort of script and push that out.
That's a part that a lot of people don't hear about or know about, you know? I mean, this is the first time I've ever heard of that side of the war, you know?
Well, we had a program. When I was there in 2006, we decided that we were going to do this radio series called, we called it the Afghan Archers. And we called it the Afghan Archers because in the UK, there's the longest running radio serial show in the world. It's called The Archers, and it's been going for, I don't know how many years, but I mean, it's going when I was a kid, so it's been going for well over 60 odd years. And so we and it's about a farming community, basically. So we decided that we were going to do this series, and the first one we wrote the script, and it got the boys to translate it, and it didn't really work. And I spoke with the boys quite a lot about it, and they said, well, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound proper. And one of my boys, he says, well, I used to do a bit of radio work and script writing. So I gave him a brief of what we were going to do. And I think the second one that we did was it was something to do. A bomb had gone off in the local market, so we sent it around that, and it was the message in there was that we should, if you know who was who set it off, who planted it, tell the authorities. So that was the message that we wove into this. It was only about 10-15 minutes long. So we wrote this script and translated it back into English, and you read it in English and it doesn't make much sense. I mean, it doesn't read right. So I put the two scripts together and I sent it up for approval, because everything that we do has to be approved by the legal officer, the political officer, before it goes to the commander. So we sent these scripts out and only landed on the desk for about 5 minutes. I got a call. The commander wants to see you. All right. So I've gone and bagged my tabs in and give the. This is a general mind. This is the Grand Fromage.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of the whole operation where we were. He said, "What is this?" So exactly what I said. Right. So I explained why we've done it this way. I said, I've got a script writer that writes it in Pashto, and they translate it back into English. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense, but it does in Pashto, and that's who we're trying to influence. He said, I don't have a problem with that at all. Signed it off. And he because the legal officer and the political officer was in there waiting to chew me to pieces. So explain why we've done it the way we did it, and it worked really well. And we did about 4 episodes with blokes, and then I was doing some work with the women's centre down in Lashkar, and there was a woman in there that I'd first met in Kabul in 2002 at the lawyer Jirga. There was a big the big countrywide lawyer Jirga was held in Kabul in 2002. And I saw this woman up on the stage, and she spoke her piece, and I managed to get a little interview with her afterwards, because I had a Turk with me, and we did it because we were doing in Kabul. We were doing something called the ISAF News, and it was a tri-language newspaper, all good news about what we were doing and stuff like that. So I went out English, Pashto, and Dari. So I'd met her up there in 2002, and she's down in Lashkar. I think she was a local councillor or something like that, but she worked at the women's centre, and she remembered me. I remembered her. We had a chat, and I said, would you be able to get some ladies together to be able to record a couple of episodes of this, because she'd heard the show. I mean, everybody had, and she said yes, we'd love to. So I got Arif, my script writer, to write a script for these ladies, and they we brought them into camp, and we had a room set aside to do the recordings and stuff, and we were in there for about 4 hours, and they were going through the script and changing things, and oh God, what's going on? so we finally, it took 10 minutes, boom, we did it in one hit. 4 hours, and then the record was a bang. and that went out, and that went down a real storm, and we did a second one, and then I left. My tour was up.
Wow.
And I'm not quite sure. I think they tried to carry it on afterwards, but then a new broom comes in, and they want to change everything. So we try to keep continuity in what we call the PSE, the psychological support element. But a new commander comes in, wants to make a mark, new broom and all that. And I mean, I've been working with 3 Commando Brigade with the Royal Marines, and I think, was it the Paris came in, 16 Air Assault Brigade came in, and yeah, different barrow monkeys altogether, that lot.
You wrap up your career in the Royal Army, and you go back to the UK, and you start a podcast. What?
No. In 2009, when my last tour of Afghanistan, I came back, and I had to move jobs. I couldn't stay where I was in PSYOPS. I've been there for the best part of 11 years. And I got offered a couple of other jobs I didn't really fancy. There was a job up the I branch, which is the interrogation school, as an instructor, and I didn't really fancy that. There was a job where I could go around the country doing counter-terrorist briefings. I didn't really fancy that either. And this welfare job came up in London. I thought, that sounds different. New job, never, they hadn't had this role before. So I went and had the interview, got the job. When I did the welfare officers course, and I started, and I had a blank piece of paper. Blank piece of paper. Do what you want.
Wow.
You're in charge of the welfare for these blokes. So I got, I think it was about 108 blokes on the company strength, and I'm in charge of their welfare. And so welfare involves an awful lot of sport and adventurous training.
Nice. And so that's where the hang gliding and the skiing.
No, the hang gliding was years before that, but I took guys gliding, proper gliders. I managed to get some guys out doing some gliding. I took guys sailing, did a lot of sailing. Took guys, we formed a rugby club, a rugby team. I took guys skiing, and I had guys going off on adventurous training up to Wales and doing some hill climbing and all that sort of thing. So I arranged an awful lot of adventurous training and fun stuff. Along with the ceremonial piece, I mean, the main focus in London is the ceremonial piece, which I think there's not a person will disagree with me that we do it the best in the world. There's nobody does pomp and circumstance and ceremonial duties like the British.
Yeah.
So I got involved with that quite a lot. And then I did that for 8 years. Then I retired in 2018 and did a bit of sailing. We had our own boat. We sailed up to the Baltic. We sailed up from the English Channel up through the Kiel Canal, spent some time in Denmark and Sweden and up into Norway, and then sailed back down again. And then the following year, we went into that lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was starting to drink a little bit too much, the old spiced rum. And I woke up one morning, I didn't have I don't suffer hangovers, that's the problem. I can drink half a litre or a spiced rum, no problem at all. And I'm thinking, this is every night. I've got to stop this. But I was working on Ancestry, and I found my great grandfather who was in the Royal Navy, and he lived about 3 miles from where I live now, across in Portsmouth. And he died in 1930. And I managed to find his sort of service record, and he was a chief stoker. And I thought, there's not a lot I can find out about him on his little bits, but I thought his story's lost. And I got these skills from the radio days. Why don't I put them to use? And I started a podcast. So I did 24 half-an-hour episodes of my life. So for any of your listeners out there that suffer from insomnia and need something to help them get to sleep, what?
That's awesome.
And then I got to the end of that, and we're still in lockdown. I thought, well, what do I do next? Well, I'll start doing other people. So that's what I've done. And I've just recorded number 149.
Wow.
Or 148. Yeah. Somewhere about that, of other people, and get their life stories. And that's what the Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories is all about, is other people.
When I talk to individuals that have the experience that you have, I like to try and get a sense of really their leadership philosophy, because I mean, in the many roles that you've had, you've learned or acquired some really incredible leadership skills. It's all about influence, being able to influence those that you're leading. And I'm curious what you've developed as far as your leadership philosophy and how you operate when you're leading other people.
My philosophy is I like to lead by example. And I like to think that people look up to what I'm doing and they'll follow me into thick and thin. And if I've got to start shouting and bawling at somebody, then I failed, basically. I've not done my job properly. I've not had that. I haven't gained their respect. I mean, it's quite funny. When I first came back from Afghanistan and I went to this company of foot guards, I'm thinking, these blokes are going to be running rings around me. And the sergeant major, he says, boys are going out. I've only been there for a day. And he said, boys are going out for a run in the morning. Do you want to join them? Okay. Thinking, oh no, these young fellas, I mean, sort of 18, sort of 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they're going to be running rags out around a 53-year-old. Anyway, so we've set off and we've gone out and just in sort of PT kit, and we're going for a run up what they should call Shooters Hill. So it's only a couple of miles across Woolwich Common and then up Shooters Hill, turn around and come back down again. we ain't gone but half a mile, and these lads are starting to drop back, and I'm thinking, I need to start doing. So I start, come on, Julian, along, come on, if you can't keep up with me, you shouldn't be here. So I end up leading them up this hill.
Wow.
There's me worried about I'm not going to be able to keep up with them. I think they were worried they couldn't keep up with me.
Yeah,
I was pretty fit back then. I must admit, I mean, 6 months in Afghanistan, doing a lot of fizz, when you get downtime, which wasn't a lot, but I mean, literally lugging stuff around day in, day out, you maintain a pretty good level of fitness. So I was pretty fit, and I was back playing rugby for the local team where I lived, because I travelled into London every day, which is about sort of 30 miles round. So the weekends I was playing rugby, and so I was pretty fit back then, and I needn't have worried.
Yeah.
so I kind of, day two of the job, I gained an awful lot of respect from the blokes, and so if I've got to start shouting at people, then I've failed, and that's the way I like to lead by example. I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
So, and that by and large worked pretty well.
For those listening, what would the best way for them to connect with you, learn more about you? I know you've got some social media accounts, and I mean, do you have a website set up for your podcast or anything like that?
Yeah, there's the Buzzsprout one that I load up all the audio podcasts on, and they go out across all the major platforms: Spotify, Deezer, Apple, and all the others. There's YouTube, and that's, again, I mean, it's Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories, and that will come up. And yeah, I do a couple of live streams a week as well. We just started on a Tuesday. I do an amazing quiz and fun facts, and that goes out at 9 o'clock. At the moment, British summertime, it will be GMT in a couple of weeks' time. And then on Thursday, I do Taboos on a Thursday, and that's a little bit more of a serious program where we're talking about taboos, and trying to normalise the conversation about it to help people feel comfortable about talking about things like death, bereavement, anxiety, depression, PTSD, you name it, those sort of subjects. We're trying to destigmatise suicide, and it's just normalising the conversation that you can have over a dinner table, and feel comfortable having, and that's the driving force behind that particular show.
And where would people find the live stream?
It goes out on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Twitter. So the Taboos on a Thursday goes out at 7 p.m. until 8:15 p.m. Obviously, British summertime, Greenwich Mean Time. The amazing quiz and fun facts goes out on a Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And so the podcasts are up on YouTube and all the podcast apps. So if you want to listen to the audio version or you want to watch the people, I've had some terrific guests on. I've even had young Dave there.
Yeah.
He has a good story to tell.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It was really good conversation.
Privilege.
Yeah. Definitely for everyone listening, check out Tim's podcast and check him out on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'll have links in the show notes. So be sure to check him out, like, subscribe, all that. Yeah. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, hopefully somebody's learned something new that they didn't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know I certainly did, and I really appreciate you sharing so much of your story with us. And yeah, it's really incredible. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're absolutely welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of From Embers to Excellence. Please visit hollenbachleadership.com for additional content, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.